Good morning, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, all
Good
over the
morning.
world. Thank you all for joining. Everything is pumping. Liquidity is pumping. Bitcoin is pumping. Gold is pumping. Stocks are in the toilet. But let's break it all down. Are we getting to the level of decoupling we've been waiting for a long time? Will Bitcoin catch up to gold? What's happening around the world in terms of markets being flooded with liquidity and so much more? But before we jump into our very deep agenda, Mando, good morning. All good in the hood?
All's great over here, man. Yeah.
Good.
Good week. I think we spoke about last week that I felt that Bitcoin dominance would continue to be very strong, and it's been a strong week for Bitcoin. I think at the end of last week, a little bit scared that it wouldn't couple up with gold. It would just kind of went sideways. But today, looking good. It feels like the gold correlations come back, and we're looking like we're about to hit 90K.
Awesome. I'm in the room right beside CTO. We're both at the windows behind us. CTO, how are you?
I'm fantastic, James. It's good that it's pumping because we were all pretty bullish last Monday. So the DCA pump is back.
Yes, it is. Thank goodness. And everybody's feeling happy in the audience too, unlike 3 or 4 weeks ago, where the tariff tensions are driving people nuts. And Mr. Marty Party.
Hi guys, how are you doing? Yeah, very
good.
happy. The market structure changed on April 6th. We turned around. Started out slow, but as you see, it catches up with the liquidity lag. We saw Japan print liquidity last night. Their money supply went up, and the dollar started dropping, and that was your indicator. We watched it last night. Bitcoin turned around following gold. So yeah, we've got a decoupling, guys. This is what Bitcoin is made for, and here it's happening. Yep.
I always said for years and years, I've always said the term "Bitty loves a crisis," whatever it takes, you know. And this is a crisis time. You can see the reactions around the world. But let's talk about our agenda real quick. And before we continue, links below. You can watch this anywhere you want on Mando's channel. Check out Mando's newsletter; it's killer. Marty, super active on X, and he has live spaces all the time. And CTO Larsson website, indicators, Twitter, YouTube channel. Links are everywhere. Follow us wherever you want. We just want the word to get out. Let's talk about the agenda. We're going to talk about, is the breakout confirmed? A lot of people talking about it. This is a technical breakout from a downward channel, and we'll go to CTO on that one. And is the biggest Bitcoin pump ever loading? Because if you look at what gold is doing, and I have to do a little bit of a mea culpa like this. I've been watching gold for 35 years. I've never seen it doing what it's done in the last 6 to 9 months. It's taken everybody by surprise. And typically when gold rallies, it means the world's about to end. We're ready for caveman days. So I'd like to dig into that with everybody here as well. And is Bitcoin decoupling at last from stocks? We are right in the middle ground between gold and stocks. Stocks are down 7% over the last 10 days. Gold is up 7% over the last 10 days. And Bitcoin's flat. Actually, it's now positive. And we talk about who is buying gold like crazy, and BTC Breakdown. We'll talk about MicroStrategy stacking as well as MetaPlanet. Silbert with some insights on crypto. And Sol on-chain activity is coming back. So let's get into the very first story. As I mentioned, Bitcoin is holding up very well. This is over the last 10 days. Again, stocks down 7%. Stocks continue to fall this morning. But Bitcoin is rallying. And for the last many years, Bitcoin typically follows risk assets down. It's not doing that today because gold is also going to the moon. So it's showing that we are potentially on the path to decoupling in the next 60 days because of the typical lag with liquidity, the lag with performance, things getting oversold. The next 60 days could be very impressive for Bitcoin. I'm going to pass this to you first, Mando. What's going to happen over the next 30 to 60 days? What do you feel?
Yeah, you're right about gold, by the way. Gold doesn't move like this. In fact, gold now outperformed the S&P over the last 20 years, which I think is a pretty wild stat. Very aggressive moves higher at the moment. Obviously, I think people are just searching for the asset to own, and gold seems like the best alternative. Stocks are a little bit worried about the trade tensions. Bonds, they're obviously worried about inflation, and also maybe even some credit risk with some of these. Then you have other commodities like oil. Again, people are worried about that things like a recession, and then you move out into more esoteric things. But gold has been seen as this inflation hedge, would generally do better in a less globalized world, and also in a world where people might move away from the dollar. So yeah, gold is pumping, could also be viewed under the lens of the dollar dumping. So you have the dollar going down quite a lot over the last week or so. Bitcoin, I was a little bit disappointed in it last week because gold just kept on going higher and Bitcoin kind of went sideways again. But today that's not the case. Bitcoin's definitely looking like it's got a strong correlation to gold ever since futures opened last night and stock futures dumped. Gold started rallying again and Bitcoin started rallying. So that was a very good start to the week. Let's see how it continues. Bitcoin dominance has gone up to 64.5 nearly now. So if you bring up that chart, it's just crazy. But I think for the next 30 to 60 days, it will be this. It will be, in my eyes, it will be occasional moments where stocks wobble and take Bitcoin down occasionally. But the money printing going on, as Marty said, is really starting to pick up, particularly out of Asia. And I think this correlation with gold will take Bitcoin back up above 90K, in my opinion.
Awesome. CTO, any insights to share on where you see things going, or a gold Bitcoin lag chart before we get over to Marty?
Yeah, so if I can share the screen.
Yep. Let me remove this and go here. Whoop, hang on. Hold on a second. I gotta go here. I'm trying to. Why can't I? Full screen layout. There.
Yeah, so last week, same like Mando, I felt quite disappointed that Bitcoin was going completely flat while gold was looking like this.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's been absolutely bonkers. And last week, we had like this incredible rally and Bitcoin completely flat. And yeah, same like Mando, I felt a little bit disappointed. And I wrote in my like weekly report that I think that's one or two ways. Either Bitcoin's narrative hasn't taken on yet. It's just still like trading like a tech stock or something. Or it's delayed. The reaction is delayed. And perhaps it's the second one. Perhaps we're getting the reaction now. Because today, stocks actually look really bad. Like this chart here, the adjusted S&P 500 mini futures index, this looks very much like a rejection. Like stocks retested this previous support, now turned into resistance, going down again. This chart looks really, really bad. While Bitcoin is making structurally higher prices here. And
yeah, we're at a 1 month high, I think, right now, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. It's back to where we were, where we turned exactly a month ago, and we actually turned there one more time in 2nd of April. So of course, from a horizontal perspective, we need to get back into this range. We need to get back into 90,800, but that's very close from where we are now. That's 3-4% only. So it's but I think that the important thing isn't really the price. The important thing is that Bitcoin is going up today when stocks looks absolutely catastrophe from a chart perspective. And it's suddenly following gold up. And perhaps, is it just like a delayed reaction and that we will get some of this move as people start seeing Bitcoin as a safe asset? I think the next few days will show, or is it some other random event today? I don't know. We discussed a little bit when a sailor is buying, usually, and so on and so forth. But probably today's pump is not a sailor buy, right? So yeah, I'm very happy to see this, I must say. It's a structurally different development.
Yeah, good stuff. Marty, what's your take on the world right now?
I mean, I think we're seeing pretty much playing out as we thought, starting in 2008 with the great financial crisis and the reversal of the Chinese run up to try and attempt to take over the dollar dominance. which was sort of stopped by the great financial crisis and the massive amount of dollar printing. And then we went, obviously, Trump's first session where he started to realign trade, to try and renegotiate all these old, Paris Accords and things, and got derailed by COVID. We all know that. We don't know why. Maybe COVID was a plan. We don't know why. But they printed a tremendous amount of liquidity again. Dollar restored its dominance. We went through the Biden era, and here we are on Trump's second term, and he's kicking off where he left off, and that is to renegotiate trade with the world. Now, we all know the world has 5 to 6 organizations which do nothing, take tremendous amount of money, and it's game over. So the tariffs is the beginning. It's going to move to a sort of new world war between China and the USA for dominance, currency dominance, the yuan or the dollar. And the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, and the reason Satoshi made it, is it's the only global currency. So it's pumping because there's a flight to safety. Everywhere in the world can participate in Bitcoin, and gold. Let's be clear, gold and Bitcoin serve very much the same function. They just have a little bit different qualities. But that's what we're seeing now. I think there's a lack of trust in the markets all over the world. There's a lack of trust. Remember, the market's already in turmoil because of robotics and AI. We don't know what effect that's going to have on valuations. The profitability without staff. So I think there's a lack of trust in the global situation, and that's bonds. People are selling their bonds. Japan is selling US bonds. China is selling US bonds. The rest of the world is kind of stuck in between, and it's sort of a world war. This is how we fight world wars now. We're not dropping bombs. We're fighting for financial dominance, and we're watching it play out in real time. Finally, now as far as the structure of Bitcoin concerned, I think April 6th we saw the structure change. April 6th was the bottom, and it's just been moving up higher lows ever since. So I think structurally the lag, Raoul Pal called it. Let's give him up again. The lag was almost identical to previous cycles. Liquidity went up. As liquidity goes up, Bitcoin lags a little, but then follows liquidity. And at this time, it's got an extra sort of turbo boost running with gold. And at the same time, we're just going to have to understand that stocks are going to be volatile. No one knows the effect of technology on stocks. No one knows the effects of the interest rates on stocks. The world is in turmoil, literally, when it comes to the valuation of companies, of industry, of trade, of supply chain, and stocks is getting the brunt. So this is a great time for me to witness Bitcoin finally decoupling and to liquidity and gold is what it should be. I throw my arms in the air all the time. Why are you trading Bitcoin like a stock? It has no employees. It's got nothing to do with stock. Well, finally, we're getting our day. As you can see, Bitcoin is being traded like a commodity. So there we go. That's
exactly. And then we see the technical breakout here. A lot of people on Twitter are talking about this technical breakout, but there's a bigger story behind the scenes too, and that is the biggest pump ever is loading. This is, and goes back to liquidity. I've done videos on this. Many people have as well. But basically, this is this chart is the biggest pump ever loading. This is the lag with liquidity, about 100 days, 108 days, 90 days, whatever you want to take. And it's coming. I'll show you a couple of liquidity charts in a second that show that too. But the other thing that's so important is this. Bitcoin is lagging gold. Here you can see Bitcoin is the yellow line. Gold is that purple line. It's kind of like what the chart CTO showed as well. Gold has gone vertical. And when gold typically goes vertical, Bitcoin does too. But this time is a little bit different because the lag is, Bitcoin sometimes front runs gold a bit in a crisis, and it's not doing that this time. And part of the reason is China is apparently on a massive gold buying spree. I know. I think I have a chart on that. Hold on a second. I'll show you what China is actually doing right now. In slide 12, they are stacking like there's no tomorrow. And this is from Kobasi. Basically, they've increased their gold holdings by 5 tons in the last couple of weeks alone. That's their 5th consecutive monthly massive purchase. And they now have about 2,300 tons of gold. and I think they have about 6.5% of their reserve assets in gold. And there's talk of maybe a gold-backed yuan to fight other fiats, or maybe something for BRICS. I don't know. But this, I think they purchased 50 tons of gold in Feb as well, or 10 times more than officially reported. So China are stacking gold like the end of the world is coming. How would you read into this, Mando? Is this an alarm for you, or is this fine?
That they're stacking gold? I think
Yeah.
I partly agree with what Marty said in the past, that if the BRICS were ever going to have a currency, it might be gold backed. And interestingly, a lot of the biggest buyers of gold are in these BRICS nations. So there's an outside chance that happens in the next few decades. So, and if that were to happen, I think you have a parabolic move there in gold. I think this has just been a general trend for the last decade or so, where they've been reducing their US Treasury holdings and they've been buying gold with it. And I think that will only continue. So I think there's sometimes some fights between gold and Bitcoin holders, obviously, like they have been in the past, but I think a lot of them share some of the similar values here. They just debate on the product. So I can definitely see the value in gold. I'm not a gold bear by any means.
Yeah, good stuff. And then we have another story just breaking as well, not just the lag with gold, which I think, if I could dream up a perfect scenario, gold running is incredible because we know there's a better gold out there. So eventually logic will come to the markets. It'll become a weighing machine. But this is 21 Shares came out, and they put a new price target for year-end 2025 of Bitcoin hitting 138,555. Sounds like a very scientific number right there. But they attribute this a lot to liquidity, rising adoption, macro shocks, etc. And this is huge. And let's look at some liquidity charts. Marty, maybe you can talk to these. These are your babies. Global liquidity spikes.
Yes, exactly. This is a very important chart. I've actually become a big fan of two charts lately, which is amazing. Once again, because I'm in crypto, I've learned so much about the global market, which I never did in stocks, because we're kind of a currency. And this chart has really been amazing. I mean, I went long when you saw Japan click up there yesterday evening. So I traded using the Japanese M2 money supply, which I never thought I would. But there you can see clear as day. China, Japan, and the EU started to increase their M2 money supply all at the same time. Well, China started early. You can see they were back on the 16th. There you can see where they started ticking up. Now, the factors that increase M2 money supply are many. Okay, it's not just printing. I mean, remember, printing is just when the government spends money, they create money. So they're finding new ways to spend money. And obviously, the thoughts are in China, they're buying gold, things like that. But there's also selling US treasuries, right? So when you sell US treasuries or when you sell US stocks, those assets convert back to M2 money supply. And so the nation's money supply goes up. So this could be an indication of Japan, EU, and China exiting US stocks, exiting US bonds, and buying gold. This is what this could indicate. And I mean, I had a long conversation with somebody about it last night. Because it's not on chain, right? Bonds and treasuries, it's all opaque. We have no idea. Nobody knows why and who. If it was on chain, we could even tell who's selling treasuries, if what's influencing liquidity. But anyway, that's what's going on. You should watch the liquidity, the M2 money supplies, to really time the market.
Yeah, you nailed a very important point there as well, Marty, and that is, this shows you the historical relationship between the dollar index and US 10-year treasury yields. For the first time in my lifetime, it has completely broken down. And this is historically a measure of stress in the markets. And if it continues to widen, higher rates are not supporting the dollar right now, which means the rates will have to go a lot higher in order for them to sell those treasuries. Mando, for many people in the audience, I'm probably speaking double Dutch. Can you simplify what I'm trying to say and how bad this is? And if China is one of the theories I've had for a while, China are dumping their treasuries to mess with the US 10-year, because Besant said very openly he wants to take under 4%. He got it there for a couple of days, and now it's shooting higher. And the Dixie's tanking.
It's difficult here because there's a range of different reasons why treasuries could be dumping or yields can be going higher. There is obviously what we spoke about last week, which is foreign holdings of US treasuries is very high. So the US for many, many decades has been funding its budget deficits through foreigners, essentially. So if you then start to annoy them, they can kind of turn around and they have a bit of an ace card here. And that's when we spoke about there's another person in the room other than just Trump here. The bond market has its say. At the same time, part of this is due to inflation expectations. And I think part of this is because of tariffs. And then I think the third bit of this is just a general worry about the dollar and its dollar hegemony, which is also kind of by the reason that gold is rallying. So it's not a great scenario here for the bond market. It would be a bit of a worry if bond yields went up to, above 5% or not. I think that would really force Trump to reconsider some of his views right now, and that's why he's railing so hard against Jerome Powell at the moment. At the moment, it hit 4.5, and then it's just kind of hung out around there. It's like 4.3, but if bond yields went back up to 5 on 10-year, I think there would be carnage again.
Exactly. And Skipping Stones mentions that the reason we care about the dollar index and yields and all that stuff is because it drives Bitcoin price. And when Dixie tanks, and that was not the same. We did a show earlier this year, I recall, and Dixie and Bitcoin were going in the same direction, which was very unusual. But now you see the impact of the Dixie going down and Bitcoin spiking, because basically the value of the dollar is falling. Therefore, Bitcoin goes up, the denominator. Anyway,
by the way, guys, the Fed will revise the US M2 money supply, which remember that it's only a month-by-month chart on April 22nd. That's tomorrow. So tomorrow we will see on the chart the new US money supply. It's currently 21.67 trillion. It could be 30 trillion. We don't know. That's the opaqueness of the US government. Like, we have no idea. China, Japan, EU, we can look at a 5-minute chart. America, opaque. It's very
I expect M2 to be up for the US, and you do too, I guess, Marty, correct?
I believe it's going to, if it's not up, I mean, I've been saying it for weeks. Where is Jerome Powell? This is like what his job is to step in now and be a leader.
Yeah,
just
well, that's
to speak.
Yeah.
Right, we'll talk about that later. But
yeah,
exactly
that's another fight, another war that's going on. The president of the United States has openly waged war even before the election with JP. And JP is not the type of guy who'll be pushed around. He wants to be Volca. He wants to leave his legacy. And it's kind of hilarious. But this is the decoupling chart again, also from you, Marty, which tells a very interesting story. Dixie going down, stock going down, different currencies going down, Hong Kong dollar going down, Bitcoin up. Woohoo, is what we like to see. This is why we're in this game. Any quick words on this, Marty?
I mean, that was Sunday. The first thing that opened was the currency market and USD JPY, and it opened up like that. And that I went long Bitcoin. I mean, you can see the trade, the signal. Bitcoin went the absolute opposite way. So those people out there trading or analyzing the market, if you're in crypto, actually, if you're in stock now, we need to start looking at these charts. Okay, Bitcoin is a global currency. Okay, it's a store of value. It's a competitor to gold. It's also a global currency. So we need to start becoming more familiar with currencies. And you can see the dollar. I see it as a punching match. This is a world war. China threw the first punch. I think we haven't seen the American retaliation yet. I believe we will see it possibly this week. I don't think this is over yet. We're going to see a series of punches before it's over. Hopefully, all coming to a new trade accord, and hopefully that'll happen. That's another topic. But that's where I see it. I think this was China's first punch on
Exactly.
Easter. They did it on Easter.
Yeah. And final quick note on the Dixie, and may the Pope rest in peace. Not to get religious, but CTO noticed that this morning. This is the dollar index breakdown from CTO's chart as well. This is a structural breakdown, which is kind of unusual to see. Any quick words on this, CTO?
Yeah, just what you said. It is a structural breakdown, as you can all see here. It broke the support, so it is very significant.
Yeah, and good for Bitcoin.
Yeah. If I can share the screen just 1 second, I just to wrap the previous topic, I can show you something. I just want to show here. So here is like some previous years, 2022, 2023. The purple line is gold and the bars is Bitcoin. See how it followed exactly. Bitcoin up, gold up, down. It followed. It's like exactly the same chart almost. And here you see how it followed exactly. The size isn't the same, but the direction is exactly the same. But then if we fast forward to today, it hasn't followed at all. Like, Bitcoin went up when gold went down, and then gold has gone up when Bitcoin has gone down, and it hasn't followed this correlation at all. And that's really what we have been talking about here on the show, that are we coming back to the patterns that we had a couple of years ago, where these were following exactly? Perhaps it's just delayed. And that's, when seeing it visually, maybe it's clearer.
Yep. No, it's definitely, and this is probably the most bullish thing I personally see right now, because we know it's going to follow, because it's like, there's better gold out there. But the problem is we're so early, the world doesn't quite realize it yet. Yeah, which is interesting, but other people do, which is super, super interesting. Speaking of other people, Michael Saylor buys another big bag of Bitcoin, over $500 million worth, adding, how much did they buy? Get this right. 6,556 Bitcoin. Remember, only 450 are issued a day, and they bought them at 67.7. So he did hang on. No, that's the average price. 84,785. So he's technically $4,000 in profit from his buy last week. And normally when Saylor buys, he doesn't care at what price. He always says he'll be buying the top forever. But he's making over 4,000 profit per Bitcoin right now on this trade. And the MicroStrategy NAV premium is holding up to 1.82. So their infinite money market machine, money glitch, is still working and are very much alive and well. Metaplanet also bought too. And these treasuries, I did a video last week and broke down the cohorts. I do it about every 6 months or so, the Bitcoin cohorts. And I discovered something that took me completely by surprise. There's a cohort called the Dolphins. They have between 100 and 1,000 Bitcoin. This cohort has exploded while everybody else has been selling, with the exception of the whales, the 10,000 to 100,000, which represents the ETFs and Saylor. But the Dolphins, 100 to 1,000 Bitcoin, added 14%, which we've never seen a move like that. And now that's the biggest owner group of Bitcoin on the entire planet, that 100 to 1,000 Bitcoin wallet size. I found that to be very profound, but I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know if other people are as excited as me, because that tells me there's a new buyer in town, and they're not ETFs. They're not huge companies like MicroStrategy, but they're not retail either, because that's a weird pocket. Mando, what do you think of this cohort group? Do you think there's treasuries stacking behind the scenes, or little nation states snacking on 100, 200 Bitcoin here and there?
It's a really interesting point. I continue to think that what you just said, that the people that are probably wealthy and maybe have a lot of exposure to the current system, potentially like a globalized system, either they own a company or they're in the hundreds of millions sort of range, Bitcoin, maybe even billionaires, like they want to have it as a hedge to the whole world collapsing, in the same way that often those people are also drawn towards gold. Like for them, Bitcoin is a hedge on the current system failing them. And I think that as a cohort may grow. And I think it will only grow with time, actually, as kind of boomers mature into millennials and and we start to see a lot of those are more interested in Bitcoin as a product for that hedge. So yeah, I can imagine that Dolphin class will only grow.
Yeah, it was a stunning realization to me.
Can I add one thing on that?
Yeah.
Because I think the base case starts becoming that you should have like 2% digital assets. So large investors, if they have 0, maybe they have to go to 2% just to be flat, like flat versus base index. I heard a lot of people talking about that it kind of starts seeing like the base case. You have some US stocks, you have some global stocks, some bonds, and you need to have like 2% digital assets. So perhaps it's some of those players.
Yeah, I agree. And it's staggering. And by the way, they're not buying through the ETFs. They're stacking in the traditional way, owning the bearer asset that is Bitcoin, which is also quite interesting. So it'll all shake out. But I always used to watch the whales and watch the whales do. Now I'm obsessed with this dolphin cohort. Again, 100 to 1,000 Bitcoin, they have just exploded and like never before. And I've been looking at this stuff since 2017. So it's interesting. Let's move on with the agenda. So Michael Saylor's snacking. And who else is buying? Metaplanet's buying as well. But the next story is, Solana got completely smashed during the mini bear, mini drawdown, consolidation period, whatever one you want to call it. But a lot of people now are seeing it's coming back. They believe ETFs are coming. And there was some interesting stuff happening with Novogratz and Galaxy. I don't know, Marty, if you tracked that. Apparently, they moved a truckload from Binance. I don't know if it's for
Galaxy's
staking.
actually been very active under the covers. Remember, Galaxy have moved their physical location into the USA. That was have applied to IPO. So Galaxy will be a publicly traded company along with Circle. And then they've been selling Ethereum, buying a lot of Solana. And then also they proposed a new Sol inflation proposal that just came out last week. So you remember there was a previous proposal that failed. Because people thought it was rushed. Well, Galaxy kind of took it and reformed it with the input of the people who thought there should be changes, and have proposed it and done it in a very official way. So it looks like it's like a given. It's going to pass. So Galaxy is, they're the number 3 validator of Solana behind Binance and Helios. They're making a big move on Solana. It's clear. Circle printed another 250 million today. And what I'm noticing, I watch whale trades constantly throughout the day and pick up anything over $1 million and analyze it. And the movement of value, if you're a whale, an exchange or a large institution, and you want to move value, typically you used Bitcoin, right? That was all there was. Then you used Ethereum because it was a little bit faster. Now they're using Solana, okay? It used to be Solana was 500,000 to 1 million. Then it went to 1.5 million. Now 2. Now it's up to 3 to 5 million. So as liquidity gets put into the Solana network, it can be used for these large movements of value, without a lot of slippage. So I'm watching a lot of things happening. Galaxy is very much involved. And then obviously we've got Firedancer now at 3.5% of stake is on Firedancer. That's going to be the big boom. And, I think at the end of the day, guys, we've got to understand this is about China and the US. China is pushing for a gold-backed digital yuan on their own blockchain. It's called the digital yuan. They already do it for cross-border payments. The US is pushing for a stable coin, a US digital dollar running on public networks. And the public networks are probably going to be the ones USDC issues on. That is Solana, Sui, Base, some of the other L2s and Ethereum. So it's a very interesting situation, but I think we really have to focus on stable coins being the big use case. And I think Solana and Galaxy Digital and the validators and Firedancer is all a big move to be the stable coin network for the USA. In my opinion, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And deepen is on fire. I got an interesting theory here regarding alt season. People thought, like literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, that Bitcoin was dead, alts were totally toast. That was it. We were done for the next 2 or 3 years. But when I remember back to 2020 and 2021, every time Bitcoin took a run, then within a certain lag, or sometimes it was 2 or 3 months, then ETH would run. And that would signal beginning of a mini alt pump. Over the last year, the new ETH has tended to be Sol, where Sol runs first, and then the other alts run after that.
Correct.
Yeah, am I nuts, or is that the actual pattern?
No, that is what's happening. Yep.
Okay. CTO, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because it kind of goes from the most risk-free, so to say, or the least risk, which is Bitcoin in this market. And then when risk appetite starts coming back a little bit, people go into the kind of safest alt, which used to be Ethereum. Now I think it's Solana. And then the higher the risk appetite goes, the further it goes into like the meme coins, the micro caps, the leveraged meme coins, and so on, and then it tops out. So that, and I don't think that's going to change. People always say that this time is different. I don't think so. I think this is like basic human psychology. You're scared, then you get less scared and more optimistic and more aggressive. I don't think that's going to change ever. I think that's a basic human psychology. And I have some interesting charts to show here also on the Sol and ETH, because what everyone, including myself, have asked for the longest time is for Vitalik to come out and actually propose some changes. And now he did come out and propose something, some radical changes to Ethereum layer 1. And what happened? ETH BTC all-time low again today. It didn't work. Nothing changed. This would be the day for Ethereum to turn around. It hasn't. In fact, this channel continues. This is Sol versus ETH, which has been in this super rock solid channel, and it's still there. It hasn't changed anything. So and the Sol to BTC chart looks really good. It broke. Remember, we were in this channel for almost a year. Then it broke down. That means we got a range breakdown target, which I got to here at 0.00141. It hit that, overshot it a little bit, but it's now safely back in that range. And from this chart, it looks like this could very well be in the bottom. Exactly like you say, James, that perhaps risk appetite starts coming back. If Bitcoin finds its footing, some capital will start moving into the most safe altcoin, which seems to be Sol here, and then it could continue from there. So this is a very important chart to follow together with the Bitcoin chart.
Exactly. There's another interesting little story that's popped up too. Thank you for that. Is we have to talk about ETH. Vitalik has been very active, and he now has a new plan to fix ETH with major upgrade timelines. Mando, first, I'll be interested in what you think of this. And it's stunning to me because last time he had a proposal, like literally it was years into the future, out to 2029, which is laughable because the world will be completely different in 2029. And things like, who knows, Bitcoin miners may not exist, Bitcoin may not exist, Solana may not exist. Everything will change really fast. So I want people to understand that. You got to look at markets season by season. You got to get into the winners early in bear markets. A lot of people who are very emotional here, etc. But ETH now, Vitalik heard, I guess, the community. Now he's trying to bring the timelines forward to be able to fix a couple of things. I didn't dig into detail on this, but this is much more of a realistic estimate, best case, 3 to 5 years to fix, or 3.5 years to fix ETH. Do you think this is an exercise in futility, or Mando, do you think Vitalik can actually fix ETH?
I think there's a lot going for ETH at the same time. You know, ETH is not dead as a network, but the actual asset itself, ETH, rather than the Ethereum network, I think has had real issues with the value capture of what's going on ETH. So I think he should be thinking like this. He should be thinking boldly. Obviously, the timelines are not ideal, as they always are, kind of with ETH. But I think he needs to be thinking about this. I think they do need an overhaul of potentially EVM and the value capture to the L1. I think everyone is saying that. So I hope that he succeeds with this. Yeah, because I think ETH as a network has got a lot going for it still.
Yeah, the latest stat I saw is just how Base is completely cannibalizing not only the users, but the revenue and the fees from ETH. See, it's actually, Marty, to you first on this. Can we change the wings on the plane?
Yeah, I read if you go to Ethereum Magicians, I read the entire, Vitalik's entire prose. It's a thesis. Basically, at the end of the day, he's proposing to rebuild Ethereum entirely. Okay, so replace what we call the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine, which is just the software that runs on all the nodes that stores the same data in memory and replicates it across the network, with a newer programming language, which is actually not that new, but it's gaining momentum, called RISC-V. So instead of having a virtual machine, you would have one of these RISC-V virtual machines. So he's actually proposing rebuilding Ethereum entirely with sort of, Solana went with Rust, Sui went with Rust, and built the SVMs. He's proposing even a further enhancement, even a more unproven sort of R&D type language, if you want it. It's a radical idea, people. Now, the timelines for this are 2032. He's proposing. Okay?
Wow.
2032, like James just alluded to. The world will be a very different place in 2032. So I think it's a little late. I like the idea. I think it's just a little late. They should have been doing this in 2022. They should have started rebuilding the EVM, which was built in C++ with original code from 2004. And we had Charles Hodgkinson on my space the other day, and he was telling us the full story of Ethereum, like literally from when they met to how they built Ethereum, to the arguments, the dispersion, how they went their separate ways, the differences. And he can identify the problems with Ethereum. I mean, down to the technical issues. And this proposal by Baturin is trying to address those three issues. And by doing so, he's basically saying, we will rewrite the EVM, we will pass past Rust, where everyone else went, to even a newer, more progressive programming construct called RISC-V, RISC-V.
Yep.
Okay, and this is coming from, I believe, the Nervos project. Nervos were the first to do this, Nervos. So it's an extremely radical idea, but I respect it because they need radical change to catch up. They can't just catch up to Solana and Sui. They need to have a plan that pushes them past potentially. And that's what this plan is.
Yeah.
And it would change everything, right? It would change Ethereum entirely.
So, CTO, can you give us mathematical odds of success for RISC-V from Vitalik? Because I think the timeline is completely ridiculous. Again, the world.
Yeah. I've been part of some of these technology shifts, right? When we did the telecom, we branded it very smartly, like 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, but actually they're completely different technologies. And they were 10 years apart, roughly. So, we start 10 years before mass deployment. So I've been part of this, but there's a key to it. You have to hold on to the market share until the next one is there. Otherwise, you're out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure they will. So I feel that's the problem. The proposal is pretty good, but I feel it's maybe too little too late. I'm not sure that if nothing happens the next couple of years, next 3 years, next 5 years, next 7 years, I'm not sure it's relevant in that sense. I think that other players have taken the market share down. You also need to improve the existing technology. So when we did this, when we say we go from 3G to 4G, completely new technology, you can't only start working on the new thing. You also have to improve the previous one radically to keep the competition away, so that you get to that day 10 years later where you have the new technology. And I feel that they keep underestimating the competition, feels too late, and should have done this years ago. So yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to work probably if they don't do something early.
Because if you look at the data, like even forget Solana, you look at Sui. Sui now does 4 times more than ETH. And Sui is another one of these like murderers row upstarts that just popped up out of nowhere. So
you have to look at the commentary from the proposal and have a look. If you read the comments, you'll see a lot of skepticism. First of all, it has to get approved. He's not autonomous. He can't just decide for himself. But secondly, there'll be this long phase of integration where existing Ethereum EVM apps will remain and then slowly have to convert to risk V, which we all know is tedious, error prone. We're dealing with billions of dollars of value. This isn't just normal software. When these things go down, people's money is not available. So the roadmap will be very tedious. Expect that. And I think everybody's in agreement. But the end vision might be a better vision for Ethereum. The point is, by that time, where will the other teams have gotten? And Lindy effect, potentially by that time, it'll be too late. So we'll have to see. But
in defense of Ethereum, people always talk about Bitcoin being slow and stable and reliable, etc. Could that also be a value proposition for Ethereum, Mando? The fact that it's never gone down, etc. It's just there. It works.
Like I said, after what happened with XRP, I'm never gonna assume that a chain is ever dead. I would, in some ways, if you're an ETH, if you're still a real believer in ETH, which I think a lot of people are. Like, I think a lot of people see the value in the network, and everyone is saying, look, not enough value is going back to the token.
Yeah,
it can be seen as like a dormant coin. It's been obviously there's a lot of negativity around it, but if in 2 years this feels like it's a real possibility in the next 12 months, let's say, then it would start rallying, I reckon. I do think, but we're talking about 2 years. I don't know where it is in 2 years. Right now, it seems overvalued versus other chains to me, at least from a fee perspective, because that's just not enough is going back to the actual currency itself. But if you make wholesale changes, maybe you can see big changes.
And interesting, in 2 years as well, we'll be coming out of the bear. And remember, two things happen in the bear. It's a good time to stack. And the second thing is things are built in the bear markets, not late stage bull markets. So everybody be careful of new projects launching right now, because they're not going to get anywhere with adoption. We have one final story, and then we'll take a few quick questions. We'll wrap within the hour. Barry Silbert, CEO of Digital Currency Group, DCG, infamy. He comes out and says, and it's like a bit of a mea culpa and some regret here. I don't know if you saw this one, Mando, but he said if he just bought Bitcoin instead of investing in all the crypto projects and crypto startups, he would have made a lot of money. Instead, he lost a lot of money. And he says 99.9% of tokens are worthless, which is what we've been saying here for years. What did you think of this? If you heard of the story, or anybody?
I hear this from so many different people in VCs, like an unbelievable amount of people in these sort of positions say, if I just hold on to my Bitcoin since the start, I actually would have made way more. I think it's difficult to hold on to Bitcoin during that whole period. And I think a lot of people think it's like good to diversify at times, but Bitcoin's dominance just looks like it's on a one-way ship at the moment. So I think a lot of people in crypto have these stories, right? If I just kept holding my Bitcoin back then, and that goes all the way from the guy who bought a pizza all the way up to the huge VC firms that were investing throughout the whole ICO era and beyond. So this makes, I think most people have this sort of story, if I'm honest. I watched his interview as well with Raul over I think it was a few days ago. He was very bullish on Tau, which is Bitensor, which is
terrible tokenomics, disastrous tokenomics.
The tokenomics are the same as Bitcoin, right, in terms of supply, but there was obviously some that
with the big holdings, that's the problem.
With big holdings, yeah, because it was technically more of a fair launch, but there are some big holders. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting for him to say with one hand he thought Bitcoin was like this, and then be touting you should get into Tau. Bitensor's actually done it well since that interview, so I don't know.
Yeah, It's the power of these guys. Marty, any thoughts on 99.9%?
Yeah, I mean, I know Barry. He's not that, guys. He's not that smart. Okay, he's not a technical guy. First of all, we have to understand there's a few kinds of cryptos, right? Let's preface this. U.S. crypto innovation has been absolutely choked since the beginning by the Elizabeth Warren's choke point, the banking system, the FDIC. We all know that. So innovation was suppressed. I worked with startups through the ICO boom in 2017 that all closed down because of fear of litigation from choke point. No law firms would represent them. So innovation was stifled. So all of these crypto startups he invested in, they didn't fail for any other reason. So he's correct in saying if he had held Bitcoin, he would have done better. But the reasoning needs to be understood. And that is that crypto startups were literally suppressed legally. Crypto bad, crypto bad. The other thing we need to understand is that there's several types of crypto. Crypto is not just one thing. There's store of value, Bitcoin. There's execution layer, the network tokens, Solana, Sui, Ethereum, which move value and execute smart contracts. And then there's tokens, which the word token means to represent something. Represent something that can represent equity in a company, votes in a government's decision, etc., etc. And the execution layer moves those tokens around. Bitcoin stores the value. So you can see Barry is kind of, once again, just using that word crypto again and not understanding the difference, and he never really did. But he's 100% right, technically, if he had held Bitcoin. But the reason those crypto startups failed is not because they were bad or there's no use case. It's because they were literally hammered to the ground by the US regulators. So I have a little bit of a different take on it, and I agree with him. I think he would have probably made more, but I think when you read the words, you need to be very clear in the context of what he's saying.
Yeah,
the narrative.
Awesome stuff. So we've covered. Yes, please.
You have to trade the altcoins, cannot hodl altcoins. That's statistically that has not been a successful approach if looking back, because they tend to get replaced by newer and better technologies. So that's my take on that. That's what he should have done, because I think he was early in many projects, but then he didn't have an exit strategy, just held on to them forever.
Yeah, that definitely is a problem. I just saw something there. Bitcoin is right at the 200-day moving average, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, in the bull markets, we rarely are down below under the 200-day in bull markets. The question is, can we stay above it now? Marty.
One final thought there that I think is important to understand. Barry is 100% right. 99% of tokens will disappear. Why? Because they have no use. They were purely meant to raise money. They're meme coins. They're grifters. They don't have a purpose. They're not better than their competitors. Just like zombie companies and penny stocks, 99% of them will disappear. People need to understand that crypto is not every crypto will go up. In fact, 99% of crypto goes down. You need to make sure you're in the correct crypto. It's a common mistake. People just buy crypto thinking it's one thing. It's not. There are a few cryptos that will succeed, and the rest will fail.
Exactly.
I want to make sure
99. He said 99.9%, which, given the number of cryptos right now, I mean, what was 2022? We hit 20,000 cryptos, and now it's millions. Thanks to Pump.fund. So, CTO, tell us about the 200-day moving average. We're at that level exactly right now.
Yeah, I don't
Can
really
we hold
use
it?
it.
Can we get through?
That's the thing. I feel that, I mean, moving average is a moving average crossing is a way to capture trend, and I feel that there are potentially better and faster way to identify trend shift. So I don't really use it. I feel that horizontal levels are more useful than diagonal levels, and I don't really use the moving average for trend identification. I feel that the key event we need now is to get above 90,800. That, in the eyes of a lot of people, would change and confirm that we have left this bottom behind us and that we are back in the range, setting up for a new all-time high breakout. I think that's the key. And it's very close from here. It was 3% before. Now it was 3.8%. Now it's 2.85%. So we're very close, and it could happen today, any day.
Yeah, awesome. Let's do a quick couple of questions, and then we wrap in 5 minutes. A lot of questions about SUI. Where are we with SUI? And full disclosure, I've got a small position in SUI. Yeah.
SUI is having their base camp in Dubai. That's their big annual conference. It's on March 1st. There'll be lots of new announcements. SUI is poised to explode. Its finalization and settlement times are still unparamount until Firedancer comes out. They have unbelievable infra, deep book, Walrus, the first decentralized storage to compete with Amazon Cloud. So look out for a lot of announcements to come out of that, and for potential price appreciation after that. Typically after those announcements, we see a good pump. So don't sleep on SUI. It's my number 3 holding, and I'm a big believer in it. Know the team very well. So look out for post-conference pump.
And everybody, forget Solana, because we know that it does 70% of all transactions on crypto. But even if you look at SUI versus Ethereum, or SUI versus Cardano, or SUI versus XRP, or SUI versus anything, the comparison is startling. How much value is baked into that. And, I like to run ratios on ratios, again, comparing different things. And it's super impressive. So the word of advice here is, if you are holding onto a legacy coin, just compare it to one of the newer coins. I don't care which one, but the numbers are astounding. So if you need to convince yourself of a thesis, do that exercise. Don't listen to us. Do your research. Let me see. Oh, we also had some news this week too. People are talking about it, that the staking market cap of Solana eclipsed Ethereum. How big a deal is that? And just for the record, people always get confused with TVL. ETH TVL includes staked ETH. Sol TVL does not include staked ETH. Big difference there. Any thoughts on that one, Mando?
Yeah, look, I think it's kind of crazy that Sol staked has overtaken ETH here. Like that was my main takeaway from what I saw today. Like, it's 60% or something like that of all Solana.
Yeah, 68%.
That is a really, really high number. I was surprised by it, and it's a good sign, I think, that for Solana, because number one, it shows that people are kind of invested in the whole validator network and the security of the network, but also from a supply side, I think it's a good side. So I think that's another thing that Solana's got going for it. It's that's a very good sign that the network is healthy.
Yeah, in fact, and think about this. I always look at supply and demand. What happens when a Sol ETF comes to market and the ETF tries to stack Sol? The total supply available is 32%, unlike other assets. By the way, people are asking, am I drinking? No, it's coffee in a glass, so it's not a cocktail. Just making that clear. Any thoughts on the Ohm collapse? We covered that last week in great detail. Any updates that happened in the past week from anybody here?
It didn't bounce.
So it's dead. It's a dead cat then.
I watched the whole thing happen. It started with Mr. Shin. One of their VCs dumped 15 million worth, and other VCs followed suit, and it caused great liquidations. There were people over leveraged on the network. Typical story. VCs exit, people were leveraged, hits the liquidations, chart dumps, chart never recovers, speculation, narratives, why, blame, death.
Yeah. And another interesting question, Jupiter for me, I mean, when it comes to projects, it has the most solid fundamentals, the most money making, the best tokenomics, the best rewards, and the price is in the toilet. So it shows you've got, like, Jupe makes a lot more than XRP ever could, and it's worth very little. Can somebody try and explain how crypto works to me? Because I don't get it. CTO.
Yeah, I came to the conclusion that you have to separate the fundamentals of the project with the timing. Another example is Radium that we talked about.
Yeah.
That has a lot of things going for
Money
it.
spinner. Yeah.
So that's how I manage. I have like a list of projects that I like. I don't need to hold them the whole time. I just hold them when the trend is up or when the setup is favorable. And then
Can you pull up Ray and Jupiter charts, by the way?
Absolutely.
While you're there.
Let's bring it up. So
let me try and make this work. Here we go. Talk to us where we are.
So Jupiter versus BTC looked like this. So almost downtrend the entire time versus BTC, even though it's a very great project. And Radium is even more shocking because it dumped off a cliff. Maybe this one is easier. After the pump.fun collapse and the announcement that they might make their own automatic market maker, and price from here fell like 75%. Now it's recovered quite a bit. But so this is really what I mean, that a lot of quality projects can look like that. And those of you who have been here for some time, remember that Solana went down 97%. And then it recovered and went up all the way again. So it can happen to good projects. And that's why I feel that a winning approach, I feel, is to have like a list of good projects that could succeed, and then try to hold them during the up periods. And there's no need to hodl all the way down. That's my strategy. And sometimes, it's difficult because they fall too fast or something, and it doesn't always succeed, but many times it does.
Yeah. And by the way, there's a Jupe ASR right now available. If you vote, you get free Jupiter. So go to your jupe.ag website.
Let's go.
I forgot to do the last one. I've been doing them all, and it's quite astounding how much you make. Any final thoughts before you wrap, everybody? We are at an hour. Somebody says this thing is very resilient, whatever it is.
Maybe, it is 900 million.
I'm trying to share my
$1 billion.
Yeah, back up. Don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the good signs about Solana. Some of this risky stuff starting around again. Look, I would just continue what I said last week. I think Bitcoin dominance is on a tear here. If gold is going parabolic, I think Bitcoin will continue. I think we're starting to see at least most of the better projects are keeping pace with Bitcoin. I don't think we'll see any form of an altcoin season until Bitcoin hits a new all-time high again. I think Bitcoin dominance could go up even during this period.
Yeah, good stuff. Final thoughts, Marty?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to share a slide. Can you see? It says I'm presenting. Yep. Can you see that picture of the world there?
Yeah. Let me just remove CTOs.
This is the best slide just to make people understand where we are. The top chart is to year 2000. The blue is countries which number one trading partner is the US, and the red is China. Look where we are right now. Now you understand the problem. Okay, I thought this was a very good image. It's on my Twitter. I'll share it with James if he wants to post it. But this summarizes the problem of where we are. This is going to dominate the next coming months. How do we get out of this problem? Right? US is the biggest market. Yes, that has no trade partners. China has literally taken over the world with regards to trade. Clearly, they want the reserve currency. How is that going to play out? This will be the narrative for the next months. I think while that happens, people will move their liquidity to storage, to safety, gold, and Bitcoin, and we'll have to shuffle the board, and we'll have to hope that Trump can negotiate his way out of this. But that is the best slide to illustrate pretty much the macro of what's going on right now in the world.
And that's so well said. So well said, Marty. And basically, if you look at this map, literally the Chinese car makers have just started to invade Europe, which means they'll destroy one of the backbone industries of the European Union. Think Volkswagen, think BMW, Mercedes. They're all about to be destroyed, unless, of course, the EU follows the same playbook as what the US is doing now. And I know it's very unpopular, but if nothing is changed, we all become slaves to China, with the exception of one get-out-of-jail-free card, and that is AI and robotics. that could change the game and that could create infinite GDP. But that's a separate story. We won't talk about that today. CTO, final thoughts from you, buddy?
Yes, I have one big thought. The world, I think, is changing. It's going to change a lot as a result of this renegotiation of the global trade and AI. And we talked about it here for 2 years, but I thought a lot about it. I think now is the time for a lot of people to quit their jobs. I think that the AI is coming and a lot of people underestimate it. And I realized now no one is thinking about it anymore. A couple of months ago, everyone was asking, should I quit my job and so on. Now people are scared because there's changes, but that's the time to do it because competition is less, markets are lower. It's a better time to do it now. Don't wait until everything is up and AI is actually here and replacing everyone. Now is the time to do it. I have made a video, not selling anything in it, no ads, not promoting anything. I just try to give some tips for people who want to do it. For example, in the new world, we need to build assets, cannot build skills. AI is coming for the skills. So need to build resources, and they can be different things. We need to start thinking in completely different ways. A lot of the valuable skills are becoming worthless. This is a time to do it. Build assets, resources, which can be money, it can be audience, it can be credibility, it can be contacts, it can be intellectual property, proprietary data sets, or some AI-resistant skill. But the world is changing. Need to get into the markets, need to get into faster moving markets, and need to perhaps move. A lot of people, if working digitally, maybe should do like Mando or me have done, maybe should reconsider where to move. I think my advice for everyone is to think about doing it now, not later. Do it when there is less competition and markets are low.
It's so well said. I've just posted this thing here. I did a video on it yesterday. The marginal cost of intelligence is going to zero, and the marginal cost of labor is going to zero. When you put those two things together, your brain actually melts. What you said, CTO, is so profound, and I've mentioned it many, many times too. This is a time, everybody, not for emotions, not for hate, not for throwing poop, as Raoul Pal says, at everybody. It's time to get serious and build a portfolio that will save your butt. Okay, there is no chance being a wage slave, or there is no chance having special knowledge. That's all going away. The only exit you have is to allocate and build a portfolio and become a capital allocator, as Joe says as well. That is, again, sorry to end on such a stark note, but it's so important for you all to listen to. And that's why we do this. So thank you all for coming.
Learn Mandarin.
Learn Mandarin. That's a good one. Thank you all. Thanks to mods in chat too, Sean.
Thanks, guys. It was an excellent show. Enjoy the pump. I don't think it's going to end. I think we're going to run into the nines for sure over the week. But we'll see you next Monday. Thanks for having me.
90K would be great, because then we go back up to 6 digits. Thank you, Mando. Thank you for the time. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, CTO. Great show. See you all next week. Usual time, usual place, all over the place. Bye.
Bye.
Adios.